Picture this. A quiet suburban street lined with identical lawns and American flags snapping in the breeze, where the biggest threat to your peace isn't crime or taxes. It's your own neighbors weaponizing a clipboard. One ordinary Tuesday, while I sat 200 miles away holding my mother's hand as cancer stole her last breath, the president of Oak Ridge Meadows HOA typed up $4,800 in completely fabricated violations and started foreclosure paperwork on my $280,000 ranch home. She smiled while she did it. Because rules are rules, sweetheart. But here's the part that still makes my blood simmer with dark delight. The woman who spent months painting me as the neglectful, antisocial widow who didn't care about community standards had no clue she was targeting a sitting federal judge who'd spent 18 years dismantling bigger crooks than her little suburban racket. And when I finally walked into that emergency meeting, flashed the badge, and watched her perfect blonde bob turn ghost white while her cousin the deputy backed away like she just caught the plague, the sweet, petty satisfaction was almost worth every sleepless night. Let me take you back to the beginning because this story isn't just about one house. It's about how a neighborhood full of good people let one Karen turn their HOA into a foreclosure machine that preyed on anyone grieving, broke, or simply too exhausted to fight back. My name, well, the name everyone knew is Rebecca Langford. For 2 glorious years after I bought my modest ranch in Oak Ridge Meadows, I was just Becca to the neighbors. The quiet lady who waved from the driveway, complained about rising grocery prices, and never once mentioned the black robe hanging in my closet back in the city. 18 years on the federal bench had left me bone-tired of titles and deference. I wanted anonymity. I wanted normal. The community looked perfect on paper. 180 homes built in the late 90s, monthly dues only $85 for pool maintenance and landscaping, mostly retirees and young families. The welcome packet even had a cute little map with smiley face emojis. President Brenda Voss, greeted me personally with a basket of muffins and a 47-page rulebook thicker than most novels. "We're like family here," she cooed, her smile so bright it could power the streetlights. "As long as everyone follows the standards." I nodded politely. Big mistake. The first whisper campaign started small. I'd missed 3 consecutive community spirit potlucks because I was flying back and forth to my mother's chemo appointments. Brenda's weekly newsletter suddenly included a passive-aggressive paragraph about certain residents who seemed to think they're above neighborhood involvement. Then came the anonymous notes in my mailbox. "Some of us actually care about property values." Brenda never signed them, of course. But everyone knew who dictated the narrative in Oak Ridge Meadows. I stayed silent. I was too busy watching the strongest woman I'd ever known shrink to nothing in a hospice bed that smelled like industrial cleaner and broken dreams. 6 months of family leave, Henderson's lawn service, HOA approved naturally, cutting my grass like clockwork, mail forwarded, everything by the book. I even emailed Brenda photos of the signed contract. Her reply was a single thumbs up emoji. The day after Mom's funeral, still wearing the same black dress that now smelled like airplane coffee and grief, I pulled into my driveway to find my front door wallpapered in certified mail. The house greeted me with that stale, abandoned scent and a vase of sympathy flowers turning brown on the counter. The thickest envelope was marked Final Notice, $2,400 in violations. My hand shook as I read the list. 12 grass violations at $50 each, grass allegedly half an inch over regulation height. The same grass Henderson's had cut every single week. 6 mailbox violations at $75 each for non-regulation color. My forest green mailbox that matched 47 others on the street. And the piece de resistance, $900 for unauthorized landscaping modification, because I'd removed one dead rose bush, with written email approval still saved on my phone. Every single date stamped during the exact weeks I'd been photographed at Mom's bedside, surrounded by hospice staff who could swear under oath I was nowhere near Oak Ridge Meadows. The letter was signed by President Brenda Voss herself. 10 days to pay or face foreclosure proceedings. I called her. It took 3 days of voicemail tag before she picked up, voice dripping with fake sympathy so thick you could spread it on toast. "Violations are violations, Rebecca. Grief isn't an excuse for letting standards slip. Perhaps you'd be happier in one of those senior communities where expectations are lower." The condescension hit like a slap. But 18 years of watching defendants lie through their teeth had taught me something priceless. Never show your cards until you know exactly how the game is rigged. So instead of screaming, I started walking the neighborhood at dusk. 3 for sale signs had popped up in the last month, each accompanied by identical violation letters. Public records showed every home sold to KCS Holdings, $40,000 below market. KCS Holdings traced straight back to Kirkpatrick Construction Services. Same last name as our beloved president. What a coincidence. Every violation notice had the exact same weird doublespace after periods. Same font. Same printer. I was staring at a factory line of manufactured foreclosures targeting anyone too distracted by real life to fight back. Then I saw Brenda's white Lexus SUV parked outside old Mrs. Florence Murphy's house 3 doors down. 82 years old, recently widowed, standing at her window clutching a violation letter with tears streaming down her face. Brenda was inside helping her understand the rules. This wasn't incompetence. This was a business model. And they just declared war on the wrong widow. Brenda didn't waste time. 48 hours after our call, an emergency HOA meeting notice appeared in my mailbox, scheduled for the next afternoon with less than the required 7 days' notice. Topic: Addressing ongoing violations threatening community property values. My house was about to become the public scapegoat. I expected maybe 15 people. Instead, 47 terrified residents packed the overheated community center, folding chairs squeaking, air conditioning broken again, fluorescent lights buzzing like angry hornets. Brenda sat at the front card table like a queen on her throne, navy blazer starched to perfection, signature clipboard clutched like a weapon. Her 19-year-old nephew Chad, the certified inspector, nodded beside her like a paid bobblehead. "We're here to protect our standards," Brenda announced, clicking through a PowerPoint that looked like a middle school project gone corporate. My lawn photos flashed on the screen, grass identical to every neighbor's. My mailbox. The spot where the dead rose bush used to be. Our inspector documented clear breaches. I stood up, 3-ring binder in hand. "May I respond?" Brenda's smile never wavered. "This isn't a courtroom, Rebecca. It's a board meeting." "Funny," I said quietly, "because it sure feels like a trial." The binder hit her table with a satisfying thud. "Here's the written approval for the rose bush. Here's every receipt from your approved lawn service. Here's time-stamped photos proving my grass matches every yard on this street." Brenda barely glanced. These could be fabricated. The word fabricated landed like a punch. In 18 years on the federal bench, no one had ever casually accused me of fraud. But I kept my face neutral. "Are you calling me a liar, Brenda?" "I'm saying desperate people do desperate things," she replied, turning to the room with theatrical sorrow. "The board has already filed preliminary lien paperwork to protect everyone's investment." My stomach dropped. No notification. Straight violation of their own bylaws. But Brenda's voice turned sing-song. "All in favor of enforcement?" For board hands shot up instantly. The 43 residents weren't even allowed to vote. That's when I pulled out my phone and started recording. "For the record," I said loudly enough for the whole room, "you're moving forward with liens on violations that occurred while I was 200 miles away caring for my dying mother, verified by hospice records. You're ignoring written approvals and receipts. And you're filing liens without proper notice." Brenda's smile flickered. "You can't record this." "Actually, I can. Single-party consent state, public meeting discussing my property." I held the phone higher so the red dot was visible to everyone. "Legal note for all of you watching at home. Always record when your life is on the line. It's your right and their worst nightmare." The energy in the room shifted like a tide turning. Florence Murphy stopped crying. A few neighbors sat up straighter. Whispers rippled. "She's got a point about the timing." Brenda slammed her gavel. Yes, she actually had a gavel, and declared the motion carried. But her voice had lost its syrupy confidence. As people filed out, old Tom Bradley, the retired veteran who'd never spoken to me before, slipped me a folded paper. "Been tracking this for months," he muttered. 15 families. Same pattern. Same buyer. You're not the first. In my car I unfolded the list. Addresses. Violation dates. Sale prices all slashed. All sold to KCS Holdings within 6 months. Brenda wasn't running an HOA, she was running a real estate extortion ring dressed up in pastel blazers and community spirit slogans. The hunter had just become the hunted. And she had no idea the prey was armed with federal authority and 18 years of experience crushing far smarter criminals than a clipboard-wielding suburban tyrant who thought grief made people weak. Game on, Brenda. Game on. The next morning at 6 a.m. Sharp, Brenda's white Lexus crunched up my driveway like a suburban tank. She emerged in razor-pressed khakis and a polo shirt that probably cost more than my monthly groceries, Chad trailing with camera and measuring tape like a reluctant sidekick. "Good morning, Rebecca," she chirped with that aggressive cheer people use right before they ruin your day. Time for our routine property wellness check. Through my bedroom window I watched them measure everything with psychotic precision. Grass height with a plastic ruler, distance from my car to the curb, even the height of my garden gnome. The performance was so absurd it would have been comedy gold if it wasn't designed to break me. This became my new 6 a.m. alarm. Brenda's daily wellness checks producing increasingly creative violations. Non-existent paint chips. Suspicious absence of Christmas decorations in September. My car's parking angle documented like a federal crime scene. Then the services started vanishing. Wednesday, sorry Rebecca. Henderson's is terminating your contract immediately. We heard you're litigious. Thursday, pool access card dead. System glitch. Only affecting your account. Friday, mailbox key suddenly didn't work. Security upgrade. Forgot to notify you. By Saturday I was effectively exiled from every community amenity. Isolation by HOA. The polite suburban version of solitary confinement. Time for nuclear counterintelligence. Monday I hit the county courthouse records room. The air thick with old paper and crushed dreams. For hours of digging uncovered the pattern. 23 homes forced into below-market sales after identical violation campaigns. Every buyer traced to shell companies linked to Kirkpatrick Construction. Average homeowner loss, $47,000. The real bombshell was in the budget documents. Last year alone, $180,000 collected in violation fees from 180 homes. Actual community improvements completed? Maybe $23,000. The missing $157,000 funneled straight into consulting fees paid to Surprise, KCS Consulting. Even better, the original 1994 HOA covenants buried in archived files looked nothing like Brenda's current 47-page rulebook. The founding document required homeowner votes for any rule changes. 0 records of such votes existed. Every fine, every lien, every threat, all issued under rules that had 0 legal standing. I was still smiling at that discovery when I overheard Brenda's voice drifting from the parking garage stairwell as I left. "We need to accelerate on the Langford property. She's getting too nosy. File the foreclosure tomorrow. I don't care if it's early. My buyer's financing expires next month, and that corner lot is worth double what we'll pay her." I recorded every word. Hands shaking with fury and adrenaline. That evening I connected with Margaret Morgan, another targeted mom fighting $3,200 in fines for excessive children's toys. Her attorney Daniel Rodriguez had been tracking similar scams across 3 counties. "It's bigger than Oak Ridge," Margaret whispered by the mailboxes. "They've stolen over $2 million in equity. But Rebecca Brenda has city planning connections. This could get dangerous." Dangerous sounded perfect. After listening to them plot to steal my home while I was still in funeral black, dangerous was exactly the invitation I needed. That night I spread Tom's list across my kitchen table alongside courthouse documents and the recorded phone call. 6 years of systematic theft targeting families during illness, divorce, job loss, death, the most vulnerable moments of human life. Brenda thought she was crushing a helpless widow. Instead, she declared war on a federal judge who'd spent her career dismantling criminal enterprises far more sophisticated than her pathetic suburban grift. But I still wanted her to dig her own grave a little deeper. 3 days later came the certified demand letter from Meadowbrook Legal Services. Her brother-in-law's strip mall office. $4,800 in accumulated fines plus $2,200 in administrative and attorney fees. $7,000 total, 5 days to pay or foreclosure. The letter claimed I'd waived appeal rights by missing mandatory mediation sessions that had never been scheduled. Attached evidence included photos of brown spots in my lawn from dog urine. I don't own a dog, and certified mail receipts dated during Mom's final week in hospice. These people weren't just thieves. They were cartoon villains who thought they were untouchable. I called Daniel Rodriguez. His office looked like an FBI war room. When I finally told him my real profession after 3 months of playing ordinary homeowner, his coffee mug froze halfway to his mouth. "You're a federal judge?" 18 years, I said. "And Brenda just violated enough federal statutes to make this a RICO case." His grin was slow and savage. "You want to give her a chance to resign quietly first? I want to give her enough rope to hang herself in front of the entire neighborhood. Because when she refuses, and she will, every single resident will witness the moment federal justice lands on her like a ton of bricks." We spent the next week quietly gathering signatures. 45 homeowners, exactly 25% needed to trigger the original incorporation document's emergency governance clause. Florence Murphy herself showed up at my door one night, tears streaming, clutching a manila envelope of forged violation reports she'd been bribed and threatened into signing. "I'll testify," she whispered. "I can't watch her destroy good people anymore." Brenda, sensing the tide turning, went full unhinged. Spray-painted threats on my mailbox. Slashed tires. Anonymous letters to my allies threatening their kids. She even filed a police report claiming I'd threatened violence, her deputy cousin happily taking the statement. What she didn't know was that my new security cameras had captured everything, including her nephew spray-painting Margaret's driveway while Brenda waited in the running Lexus like a getaway driver. The desperation peaked when Tom discovered Kirkpatrick Construction was facing bankruptcy. The HOA cash and my corner lot were literally the last lifeline keeping the family empire afloat. Tuesday morning, Brenda called an emergency board meeting with only 24 hours notice to vote a $500 special assessment for urgent infrastructure. Classic last cash grab before we could freeze the accounts. She had no idea she was walking straight into the ambush we'd spent weeks perfecting. Wednesday afternoon, the community center was standing room only. 49 residents crammed into chairs meant for 30, sweat and anticipation thick enough to taste. Brenda arrived like a general heading into her final battle, deputy cousin at her side, announcing to the room that Rebecca Langford was about to be arrested for stalking and conspiracy. The buzz was electric. Brenda stood at her card table throne and declared, "One individual has been terrorizing your board and threatening community safety." She gestured dramatically. Her cousin looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. That's when Florence Murphy stood up, voice shaking but clear. "Brenda, stop lying. I signed those fake reports because you paid me and threatened my house. I can't do this anymore." The room erupted. Gasps. Whispers. The deputy's hand drifted away from his cousin like corruption was contagious. Brenda's composure cracked. "She's senile. She has dementia." Florence kept reading her confession: forged signatures, fake inspections, 5 years of systematic fraud. Every word landed like a hammer. I waited until the chaos peaked, then stood and walked to the microphone with the calm of someone who'd sentenced worse monsters. The Channel 7 news camera I'd tipped off swung toward me. Margaret livestreamed to the neighborhood Facebook group, viewer count exploding. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, voice carrying the weight of every courtroom I'd ever commanded. "Before I respond to these accusations, you deserve to know exactly who's been running this criminal enterprise." I reached into my purse. The room went dead silent except for the buzz of fluorescent lights. "My name is Rebecca Langford, and for 18 years I have served as a United States District Court judge." I held up the gleaming federal badge. "What you've witnessed here is systematic racketeering, mail fraud, wire fraud, and civil rights violations under color of law." Brenda made a sound like a balloon deflating. The deputy took 3 giant steps backward. I kept going. "You've targeted grieving families. You've stolen homes from people facing medical crises. You've threatened children to silence parents. You thought HOA authority made you untouchable. Federal law disagrees. Brenda lunged for the microphone, shrieking about entrapment. Her own cousin blocked her path. Ma'am, step back. You're making this worse. I speed-dialed the number I'd memorized decades ago. FBI Field Office, this is Judge Rebecca Langford. I'm witnessing active federal crimes at the Oak Ridge Meadows Community Center. Agents needed immediately. The words FBI Field Office hit the room like a bomb. People started crying, relief, vindication, pure cathartic joy. Margaret hugged strangers. Tom saluted. Brenda completely lost it, grabbing the mic stand and screaming that I wasn't a real judge. The Channel 7 reporter stepped forward. Your Honor, comment on the scope? I looked straight into the camera. 6-year conspiracy. Over $2 million stolen. 23 families destroyed. This HOA was a front for organized theft. Then I turned to Brenda. Mrs. Voss, in 18 years on the bench I've learned one thing. Criminals always think they're smarter than the law. You spent 6 years preying on people at their lowest. Now you'll spend the next 8 to 12 years learning that federal prison doesn't care about your clipboard. FBI agents arrived in 18 minutes flat. Brenda, Chad, and the brother-in-law were cuffed on live stream while the community cheered like it was the Super Bowl. 6 months later, I'm sitting in the garden where Brenda planned her illegal duplex, watching neighborhood kids splash in the pool that's finally open to everyone. Monthly dues dropped to $35 with full budget transparency. New board elected by actual homeowners. Florence's treasurer. Margaret won city council. Tom runs veterans support groups. Property values jumped 12%. The scandal inspired statewide HOA reform. The FBI now has a task force. And every week I get emails from terrified homeowners across the country asking how to fight back. I tell them the same thing. Document everything, organize your neighbors, know the original governing documents, and never forget. Sometimes the quietest person on the block is the one who can bring the whole corrupt house down. So here's the question I leave you with, and I want you to answer honestly in the comments. When the HOA Karen uses community standards as a weapon to steal homes from grieving families, who's really in the wrong? The judge who hid her identity to gather evidence and expose the scam, or the power-hungry board that turned neighbor against neighbor for profit? Was justice served, or did the real criminal just get what she deserved all along? Drop your thoughts below. And if you've survived your own HOA nightmare, tell me, because the next story might be yours.